Our gospel passage today is perhaps one of those most misunderstood Bible verses that we hear, that is often misused or misattributed in a number of different ways. And very easy, I think, to get this one wrong, to have a mistake on what Jesus is intending to lay out for us. For he does say, stop judging that you may not be judged. And immediately some people will say, well, then you can't correct anybody else. Then you can't ever say that their actions are wrong, that there's no way to condemn or to credit anybody for their actions. And that's first obviously wrong, because just later in this same passage, we hear Jesus saying that this is one of the things that we should do. You should remove the splinter from your brother's eye. But he is saying, remove the beam from yours first. It is important that we do recognize harmful actions, to correct our brothers, to lead them on that right path. And that is an important part of how we are called to support one another, how the Lord has called us in our vocation, in our community, in that unity with him. But there is that other aspect that I think when we hear, stop judging that you may not be judged, for as you judge, so will you be judged. And the measure with which you measure will be measured out to you. And I think sometimes people then say, well, if I am harsh in my judgment or in my measurement, then the Lord will be harsh with me. That if I am, looking down on others or think there's no way that person could get to heaven, then it makes it that much harder for me to get to heaven. And in some respects, maybe that is correct. But then that corollary people will use and say, well, then if I am generous in how I judge, if I will assume that even this person who is very maybe anti-God or anti-Catholic or whatever else it might be, anti-morality, maybe if I am generous with them and I assume that that person is getting to heaven as well, that everybody gets to heaven, then God will be generous with me. And that's absolutely false. That's not what this is saying at all. And indeed, that's a dangerous misreading of the text, to assume that we are to judge others generously so that we might be judged generously by God. Because that is not our place to judge. We cannot get anybody to heaven. We cannot assume or judge them to be going to heaven. And indeed, if we did so, or if we tried to do so, then we are judging according to human standards, not divine, not to God, and not letting God truly be that judge. And if we are judging by human standards, that is the measure with which we are measuring. And then that measure with which we measure will be measured back to us. And we will be judged by human standards. And you know what is impossible to do? To make it to heaven by human standards. We are not to judge and judge somebody is in heaven. That is not our place. That is God's alone. We are not to judge that somebody is in hell. That is not our place. That is God's alone. Yes, we can judge actions, and we can say that is a harmful action, that is a sinful action that goes contrary to what God has taught and revealed. But the state of souls is not ours to judge. And we must be cautious in even assuming that we will be generous so that God might be generous with us. That's not what this is about. This is about saying, leaving that judgment to God, to let his divine will rule and not our human will, because we can still get God wrong. And we leave it to his judgment, to his mercy, to his love, which is far more perfect than our imperfect understanding and application of it. So let us be cautious as we hear this verse. Let us not make the same mistakes that so much of the world might do. But let us seek in Christ to unite our wills to his, that we might not live by human judgment, but that divine judgment of God alone.